Okay, so we are really actually almost done here. There's just one thing I need to correct before we move on. If I scale this up, I did something wrong here. Actually, I didn't choose right the pickers, the anchors for this close button. So let me do it again. I kind of just duplicated this one and I didn't account for the change in the anchors, I guess. I don't know. So make sure you have this correctly set. Let me save the scene just in case. So Command S or Control S. And in this lecture, we're going to be dealing with sounds. And we pretty much just have two sounds that we want to play. One when we hit the bush and one when we hit the wooden blocks. So I'm going to be bringing a folder that has, two sounds. And it's this one called sounds. Once again, this is given in the folder that I uploaded in one of the first lectures, so you should have access to that. And as said, pretty much just two sounds, pretty basic stuff. And we want to be playing these in special cases. So this hitting block, of course, will be playing when we hit the block, and the hitting bush will be playing when we hit the bush. So pretty standard. So let's start off by doing the hitting bush one, because this is the easier. Okay, so to play a sound, you basically have to have an audio source in your scene, and this is basically a component. So I'm going to disable my canvas for now. Actually, I don't even need it because I'm going to be dealing in the scene view. So double click on the list bush, so we focus on that, and I'm going to be adding an audio source for this one. So I want this element to play a sound. I'm going to quickly disable all of these elements so I can see the one that I'm going to put in. And just so you can use this add component button. I'm using Unity since version 3.x, so I'm kind of used to going here to component and then doing all this hard work. Okay, so you have a lot of properties here that you can control how sound fades, how it controls in how it controls in 3D and 2D. But as you can see, there's a spatial blend property here that says whether this sound is a 2D or 3D sound. And in this case, it's 2D, so I'm going to be leaving this this property at 0. And there's also a play on awake function that works pretty much the same way as a particle does. So when this option is selected, when we hit play, the sound is going to play. But we don't want this. We want to play this manually. So I'm going to disable this. But I didn't yet tell which sound I want to play. So here there's this audio clip property. And you can choose one audio clip. There's just two, so it's kind of easy to pick it up. And we're going to be getting this hitting bush one. So if you hit play, nothing should happen in terms of playing sounds. So now, what we want to do, we want to get the Apple script. So scripts, Apple. Okay, so in the Apple script, we're going to go into this onCollision enter to D function, and we're going to check when we're hitting the platform. And here is the place. And we already got a component from the platform to play an animation, but now we also want to get that audio source component because we want to play the sound attached to it. So this is going to be fairly simple. We're going to do platform dot get component. So we're getting the audio source component from that, and we want to play it. Here we don't have to specify which sound we want to play, which clip, because it's always going to play the clip that it's attached to it. So if you can see here in the list bush, it has an audio clip attached to it. So when you call that play method, this is the clip that's going to be played. If you want to change this in real time, you just have to expose a property of time audio clip, and then you can access, for example, a special variable of this audio source called clip, and you can assign an audio clip. So first you need to assign this audio clip, and then you have to play it to, change the clip in real time and play it. But this is pretty much all we need to do here. So let's try it out. I really don't know if I got this correctly. It shouldn't be game over though. Okay, it's not. Okay, so this is a pretty basic sound. I did this dealing with a plastic bag, you know. So I mixed a few sounds together, and you know, dealing with a plastic bag, just I don't know, pulling it and playing around with it, I could come up with a sound that kind of reminds us of something hitting a bunch of kind of burnt leaves. They are not actually burned, but the sound kind of reminds of, right? And we have just one more sound to play, and this sound is the hitting block one. And the hitting block is kind of tricky because if you think carefully, we should have theoretically a audio source for each of the blocks. So for each of these blocks, we would have to attach an audio source into these components, into these elements, and then we would have to play that audio, but we're actually destroying this block whenever we hit it. So we would have to kind of disable the element so it doesn't appear anymore. We would have to play the audio, wait until it ends, and then we'll have to actually destroy that element. This is I think the best approach, because we can have, you know, two sounds playing together. If we have just one instance of this audio source playing the sound for the wood destruction, we might have two blocks destroying at the same time, but we will be playing just one animation clip, one audio clip. So this is the best approach, but we're gonna keep it simple here, and we're going to actually attach an audio source on the apple, and the apple is going to contain the sound that needs to be played when we hit the wood block. Alright, so I'm going to add this component called the audio source, and I'm gonna attach a clip here, and this is the hitting block. I'm not going to play it on awake, and it should be 2D as well. Make sure that you have at least one audio listener in your scene, otherwise sounds won't play. Usually when you create a scene, it already has a audio listener, because it's always attached to the camera. So if you click on the main camera, it has this audio listener here. This component doesn't have any properties. So sounds in 3D, they're played with regards to this component's position. So if it's attached to the camera, sounds in 3D will be played with regards to the camera. So it's always useful to keep this component on the camera, especially if you're dealing with 3D stuff. And if you have more than one of these audio listeners, Unity will complain. So make sure you just have one in your entire scene. Okay, so now what we have to do, we just have to get the audio source component whenever we hit a block, and then play this clip. So here in the mono develop, we're hitting the block, I think right here. And there's one more thing that we need to do in here. We need to grab the audio source component. So get component. I'm getting a component from the apple, so I don't need to reference that I'm getting a component from the same game object where this script is attached to. So I'm getting a component from the same game object as the apple script. So get component audio source, and I just want to play it. Oops, not play on awake, but play it. There you go. So now let's try it. It works okay when you don't have two blocks strung at the same time, but let's see if we can get to that. Yeah, it kind of still works, but if you get, yeah, it does work. It works fairly good. So one optimization trick here. Notice how we're getting a component each time we destroy a block. This is not the best approach, because get component is not a light task. So the best thing we can do, we can assign the audio source to a variable of our class. So we can maybe define a private audio source, and I'm gonna keep a reference to the audio source that I want to play from. And in the start function, I can just initialize this as being the component audio source from this same game object. And here, instead of calling get component audio source every time, I can just use my reference that I already have here, which is called audio source. and play it directly from this reference. This is especially useful because you don't have to write get component, angle brackets, and then your component every time, which is kind of, time consuming. So you can just keep this into a variable of yours, a variable of your class. Make sure you define a value for that reference as we're doing here. So make sure you initialize it, otherwise you're gonna get a new reference. Unfortunately, I couldn't come up with more sounds because I'm a terrible sound designer, and I couldn't create, a background sound with guitar and all of that. I do play the guitar, but I'm terrible at it, so yeah, that's life, I guess. But I just came up with this fairly simple sounds, so I could give you an idea on how to implement sounds in your game. So this is all about, giving you an idea and not maybe implementing the most complex stuff ever, but instead giving you directions on how to implement your own thing. Alright, so this is it for this video.